So this is Visual 3D. This is the system that we use after we process our data through Vicon. So to start out, we're gonna open it up and then begin by opening up our pipeline, which is this little box here, and we're gonna pull up this screen, which we then select to open pipeline. And we have these made ahead of time, created for each study. And so we're going to choose the one we need for this data. And then this shows us a list of the 10 features and steps that we have in the simple pipeline. We can expand on this or subtract some of these variables out, but this is the basic one that we use. And so to execute this pipeline, we always use this step function to make sure that each of the certain steps goes through. And so some of these we don't always need. And when we do this, it pulls up this dialog box. And this is what is occurring during the trials, the kind of the little bit of the coding side behind it. And we're mostly looking to avoid any red or orange text. That kind of shows us that we have errors in what's going on when we're bringing data in and out. And so after this, we are going to select create a hybrid model and then step that. This is where we're going to open our standing file, and then we find our static calibration that we brought in from Vicon, and we're going to open that trial up and continue this step. And so if we open that up through V3D, we kind of get our static marker set, which we would see through Vicon with all the little markers. And then going back over to our pipeline, the next option is File Open. And from there we bring in our dynamic trials, which have all our movement. And so the dialog box shows the path and the file name for all these trials if you're bringing in more than one. And so our next option is to apply a model template to this, so it creates the skeleton behind it, and that's all created ahead of time and fits all the markers for the specific study and skeleton. And so once we open this up, we can see our static calibration trial has a complete skeleton, and then there's also vector angles from the joints that show our X, Y, and Z planes, and that can be changed a little bit depending on the setup and situation. And so if we look at this and anything is missing or looks incorrect, we want to make sure that up here at the top the skeleton is checked. That just brings it in and out. And then on this left side, we want to make sure that all these different variables say yes and not no. There's a few that need to be a no. But in this case, we can open it up and look and see that specific things are the way we want them. And so we were looking to see that they're all the same color and that we have our 3 marker points selected. We want our tracking points to be accurately labeled and selected as well. And if a marker happens to end up missing at a point during the actual collection with the participant, we would go in and make sure that that marker is not being used as a tracking marker, or else the skeleton is going to show some incorrect bones and things will be out of place. And so now we go back to the workspace and assign the model file as our next step to execute throughout this pipeline. So with this, you're going to select all of the dynamic trials you want to apply it to. In this case, we just have one that we're using for this example. And as we step that, now our static and dynamic trials are assigned to each other in the workspace. And so if we open that up, for some reason this dynamic trial doesn't have a head marker set. That might have just been an error. And we kind of play through it to make sure that all the markers are there. Our bones look good, movement looks solid and fluid throughout. And so on our end, we're kind of just looking that shoulders are level, knees are level. That comes in for us when we do some data analysis a little later on. And so next you can input the subject's height and mass. It's not necessary if you have that information, you can go ahead and add it in. Typically we record this in centimeters. You can change it to inches based on what is collected, if that's easier than converting it. And then we can do the same with mass. And so the next few lines in the pipeline are just standard processing steps. We go through and interpolate and then apply a low pass filter for the data, and then we are able to go ahead and save the CMZ file in the correct location of where you would like to find it. So typically we make a folder for this just to keep it a little cleaner. You can see we have a lot of different studies, different things going on. It just kind of helps keep it a little more organized. And so kind of next we have the option to calculate some joint angles and forces, but since this is just a few steps of a dynamic trial, that isn't necessary. You can go in and select different variables that you would like to extract through this program, and then you would further run those through MATLAB. And so as we go through some of these tabs up at the top, a lot of them aren't being used. They're not something that we need at the time. The most significant one is this Signals and Events tabs, which kind of lets you quickly access markers, segments, joints, forces, targets, stuff like that if they needed adjusted at all, and you can look at original versus processed once you've applied those filters to some of those options that you're looking for. So this kind of shows our center of mass. We could do that a little more accurately if we had a head, and along with the participant's height and mass as well. And so next we just kind of save it and open it in a folder that's going to show it as a CMX file, and then we can save that so we don't have to repeat this step each time, and we can run through all the dynamic trials at once and be able to pull out specific certain variables that we're looking for.